Go back to the beginning. It's always good. Go back to the beginning. Matter of fact, on this particular question of the relationship between church and state, I believe that's what Jesus did. Remember when he was confronted by that question whether you should pay taxes to Caesar or not? And after, thinking a minute and drawing a little something, I wonder what he was drawing. He then said, "Show me the coin. Show me the coin." And he gave him the money. And he looked at this coin and he says, "Whose image is stamped on this coin?" And they said, "That's Caesar's image." And then he gave the famous dictum, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's," right? And their jaws dropped and they marveled at this. Have you ever wondered why that answer was so marvelous? After all, at one level, in light of Christ's own words, it actually doesn't make sense what he said. Because what he said implied that there are two masters, God and Caesar. And you render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God, and then you happily can please the two masters, right? But unfortunately, for that understanding, Jesus himself had practically just gotten through saying, it was a few chapters before, but in case you missed it, I think it's part of the whole context of Sermon on the Mount. He had just gotten through telling people, not that long before, you cannot serve two masters. He says it. You can't serve two masters. Can't serve God and mammon. You'll love the one and have contempt for the other. You can't do it. So here we sit, watching as the Pharisees, their jaws drop. And from a Christian point of view, we shouldn't be marveling at that response and saying, "Oh, that's wonderful, Jesus. Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar. We've got these two masters, we can serve them both." Because Jesus told us we can. Right. What we should be doing is looking at that and saying, "Lord, I'm a little confused here. You just told us practically that we can't serve two masters, and now you're acting like we can. What does this mean?" And if we reflect for a moment on what it means, we would realize what Jesus did when he asked for the coin, and he said, "Whose image is stamped on this coin?" And therefore he invited people to reflect on, based on the answer, right, Caesar. Caesar's image stamped upon the coin, therefore the coin belongs to Caesar, right? But that begs the question, doesn't it? If you render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, based upon the image stamped upon the coin, then you could answer the question, what belongs to God? You'd look for his image. Where's God's image? See? And that's what they marveled at. He took them all the way back to the beginning. He took them back to the first moment when God created Adam and Eve. He took them back to the wellspring of their understanding of the relationship between God and man, when it is said in Genesis, male and female he created them, in the image and likeness of God created he them. When he declared, "I will make man in my image and likeness." And so it's quite clear there. Whose image? Where's God's image? Right here. It's stamped on who? On us. Including, by the way, Caesar. Whose image is stamped on Caesar? God's image. To whom does Caesar belong? Caesar belongs to God. You belong to God. I belong to God. It all belongs to God. Right. And that is the truth of that passage. It doesn't mean we serve two masters. It doesn't mean we give something to the government and something to the Lord and something to the church and something to our temporal master. It means that at the end of the day, it is God's will, it is God's commandment, it is God's right that governs it all. And it just so happens that sense that God's right governs it all is exactly the premise of the Declaration of Independence, isn't it? Yeah. That right and our sense of our rights, what it is right for us to do, is based upon God's will. But that then invites us to go back to the beginning and reflect for a moment on this whole question of the way in which God created us, his intention as he did so, that we would be made in his image and likeness. And here I just offer for consideration, because I don't pretend to have any more definitive word on these things than anybody else, but over the course of my years of reflection, it has occurred to me, as I pondered Genesis, to consider the fact that usually, if I'm standing in front of a mirror, then I'll see my nose and my eyes and all these other things. What's in me will be in the mirror in some way, right? Reflected. That's the whole notion of that image. And when I move, that image in the mirror will kind of move like me. And so there will be that likeness, right? So when you look at us, you are seeing something of the kind of attributes of God in us. Now, what's one of the most essential attributes of God? Does somebody control God? Well, no, because he's all powerful. Does somebody limit God? No. He is without limit. Absolute. So that means that God is absolutely under no control except his own. And therefore, in all his actions, he is what? Free. He is free. God is free. Did somebody force God to make us? Did somebody force God to provide for us? Did somebody force God to put that garden together where everything that was needed for our good would be there? Did somebody force God to do all that? No, it was a free, loving action. It was the overflowing of his own determination that led to our existence. Because God is the very paradigm of freedom. Do you think it would be possible for us to be made in the image and likeness of God and leave that out? I don't think so. We don't have his freedom, but there must be something in us, some aspect of our existence that would reflect that attribute of who he is. And that's why I think so often in the scriptures, he talks to us in such a way. He says, I have set before thee life and death, blessings and curses. Choose, he says. Isn't that right? And the Lord, when he was recruiting his disciples, did he go and beat people over the head and say, follow me or I'll burn you at the stake? No, he didn't. Actually, what he basically did quite often was just walk by. And they'd be stirred up at a level they had never known before, to go and see and to follow after, stirred up by his presence, stirred up by his words, stirred up by his truth, stirred up by his goodness, stirred up even by down through the centuries and generations by the truth of his enormous sacrifice for our good. But in the end, determined within ourselves, we turn to him. And in that moment of our turning, of our repenting, of our giving up the falsehoods and the lies for the sake of his truth, we come into our own and know that liberty wherewith Christ doth make us free.